was a warm hand. I massaged her feet and legs. She was cool with that because she didn't get much circulation there, so she was happy that I was doing that. One of her legs was cold, and I didn't think about that until 2 days later. But she had color. She had what little personality she could without utilizing her voice. She was on the road. Long road, bumpy road, but it was a road. She wasn't off to the side. She wasn't wrecked. She was on the road. Slowly, but she was recovering. And then the next day I'm at work, at my day job, because if I did this to support myself, I'd be homeless. And I get a call from my dad, and he's been there. You know what? Fuck this live recording shit. Keeps going off of its damn shit here. I'll edit that out later. This is live radio, fuck it. Okay. So, finally, my dad gives me a call about 3:15. Says she's gone. And at first, I'm like, what do you mean? She's gone where? Where'd she go? Keep in mind, she was recovering. We had seen no possible outcome other than her recovery. There was no other outcome. She was moving her arms and legs. She was getting up. She was standing. She wanted to walk. She wanted to talk. And then just like that, she's gone. Just like that. And my first thought was, all right, it's time to get shit done. I left work immediately. Went home where I told my grandmother, a woman who has had to bury 2 children now. She had 3 daughters. She's outlived 2 of them. I had to sit there while she cried in my arms, while she fell apart, while my grandmother-in-law fell apart. I was the one to tell everybody, my children, my 7-year-old who wasn't going to see her grandmother again. I was the one to tell her. That was rough. But I decided to throw myself completely into the funeral preparations. And so I did. And if I may say so, planning a funeral is a bitch and a half. When I go, burn my ass. Cremate me. Cremate me and throw me in the air. I don't care where I go. I did have another idea. I wanted to die like Valhalla. You know, the Viking funeral where you're on a boat, you're sent out to sea and you're on fire. I'd love that. Funeral pyre on a boat, just be sent out to the ocean. With bagpipers playing Amazing Grace. I think that would be fucking incredible, but I also came to find out it's illegal. So, not going to be doing that. But, anyway. So, it comes the time, and I'm sitting there, and it's so surreal to me to be sitting at Rose Hills fucking cemetery, sitting there at a desk with my dad, who is broken. This is one of the strongest men I've ever known, and he is broken. He is fucking broken. And what can I do? I did all I could do. I took everything that I could. All of my resources, all of my physical and mental strength. And I basically planned the first funeral I've ever planned. I also took on the eulogy. I took on various prayers. I took on various duties of the funeral. I made sure that it was religiously proper. I made sure that people were invited. I made sure that people were notified, that where they stayed, how every frickin' detail you can think of. And I took that on because I think I was still afraid to grieve and to mourn my mother's death. Fast forward to the day of the funeral. Now I'm working through a lot of this. Working a couple days here, one day there when I can. And then other days I'm taking off to do preparations and things like that. It's amazing how many different options there are. How many caskets are out there? How many headstones are out there? It's phenomenal how many packages are out there. How these people take such a sacred right of life and they winnow it down to package deals. Now, granted, the mortuary, the funeral home, everybody was very respectful and wonderful. It's more of the practice of it all. It's more of the practice of taking just the life of somebody and then okay, well, which package can you afford? And we were lucky to know a mortuary director who was very kind to us and very generous, and he did a great job. But, so some of the more surreal moments of that week and a half before the funeral were sitting with the bishop of her church. My mother was Latter-day Saint. Sitting with the bishop of her church in a church that I have previously reviled, in a church that I've rebelled against, and yet realizing that this was a good guy who was going to help my mom and help my dad and help everybody that he could. They offered a building for the service. Some of the women of the church made food after the service. The bishop conducted the service. I mean, they didn't have to do all this, and yet they did. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Free of charge, free of obligation, just jumping right in to help. And I am eternally grateful for that. So it was rough doing that. And then speaking about how to put together a funeral. You have to come up with, basically it's like putting together a show. It's like show prep. You got to put together songs. You got to put together who's going to speak here. What's this going to do? What's that going to do? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? You know what? I'm grateful for the experience because it kept me busy. It kept my mind going because my mind goes 1,000,000 miles a minute and usually into a fucking tree. And that funeral helped me focus, concentrate, get shit done, and put my energy to better use. So then meeting with the mortuary. Now that's another ball of wax. We met with the cemetery, and we were transferred a plot, thankfully, because plots are expensive. They're like thousands. We were transferred a plot, and then we were just given the burial costs. Then we go to the mortuary. And that's a whole nother ball of wax. That's a whole nother can of worms. These are all of the dressings that you do. This is the casket. This is the things you don't even think about for the service. The things that you always see at services and don't give a second thought, every single thing is planned. If you've never had to plan a funeral, every single thing is planned, right down to the most minute detail. There was the question about open or closed casket. We didn't know. I figured closed because she'd been through a hell of a lot these past few months. Then there was the question of a viewing. Who wants to view somebody? Now, that was another thing that I'll get to in a minute, but back to the mortuary. So there were questions about embalming. There were questions about this and that, different things. And just to real quick, here's a note to Mr. Guy Shea, DJ Bad Guy Nation. Thank you for tuning in. One of my favorites here on Spreaker.com. This guy says, is it inappropriate time to say Cavs in 7? Yes, it is, because it's going to be the Warriors in 4, Chief. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. It's going to be the Warriors in 4. And if you don't think that's a reality, I got 2 words for you. Too bad. Warriors in 4. They're just a juggernaut. It's not LeBron's fault. The Warriors are just fucking supreme. That's all it is. Warriors are the best team that's ever come out of the world. They're like fucking Team USA basketball. They're fucking incredible. Cavs haven't got a shot in hell. But back to the funeral. So you go to the mortuary, and they have, all of these different details. And the embalming was like, embalming. Wow, okay. So she's going to be embalmed, which means we're going to have an open casket. And then I found out we're going to have a viewing. And of course I was asked, are you going to have a viewing? I said, I guess, because it's part of the religious rite of the church is to have a small viewing, with a small group of people before the service, friends and family. And so I get there at the mortuary. I'm sitting with my dad. We're going over these different details. What color should the casket be? What about the casket spray? There's a floral piece called a casket spray. That's what that thing at the head of the casket is. It's called a casket spray. And then there's different packages for pictures. There's different packages for programs. There's different packages for guest books and signings. And oh my God. And all of it is so expensive. But that's what's necessary. So we handled it. Family came together and we took care of business. That's how it works. So coming to the day of the funeral, I get there about 8 o'clock. Funeral starts at 10. I walk into the church. I start setting up. I start setting up tables. I start setting up remembrances, posters. My lovely wife got 2 posters made of my mom, which were beautiful. And did work on a 3rd poster, which was awesome as well. Showcased a lot of her craft work. And then we had these seeds. My wife came up with this idea to plant or to have remembrance seeds in bags that had I'm sorry, lost my train of thought there. I have trouble doing that. That have seeds in them so that you can plant flowers in remembrance of the deceased, which is a great idea. My wife is great with that stuff. I'm not. I'm great with like dollars and cents and concrete details. And my wife is great with what's going to be cool. And that was really super cool. So my wife does deserve all the credit for that portion. So, day of the funeral, I'm setting up. And then body comes in. Body comes in, man. Oh, there's the casket. And then shit got real. I mean, it was like, okay, so here's the casket. I started feeling a little palpitation in my heart, just like, whoa, what's going on here? And then they move the casket into the viewing room. And then they open the casket. And then shit's really real. There's my mom. I'm like, fuck. Ugh. I mean, like, I got choked up for like the first time because I've been working so hard on the funeral. First time in 13 damn days since she died, I get choked up by looking at her. And she looks wonderful. I don't know what it is about embalmers. I don't know what they do. I read up on it. Embalmers are wonderful. They have to be surgeons, anatomists, yet they have to have this delicate art. They have to be makeup artists. They have to be, as I said before, surgeons because they're sewing up wounds. They have to be chemists. They have to know their shit. And Mom looked as good or better than she